guys hear me? Great. Welcome and good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining today. My name is Emerson Sklar. I'm the Chief Evangelist of Amazon Alexa. I'm joined here today by Patrick Prang, who is the Senior Product Owner of Voice Experiences for the BMW Group. And we are here to take you on a multi-year strategic partnership between Amazon and BMW and walk you through the way that we have tried to leverage Alexa, AWS, and BMW technology to create the next generation of an in-vehicle voice assistant. Now, in terms of agenda, we're going to start by introducing you to the BMW Group itself, specifically how the brand identity and reputation both drives and helps impact their vision for what a perfect in-car experience might be for the assistant. We'll talk about one component of the Alexa Enterprise portfolio, which is Alexa Custom Assistant, or ACA, and why that was chosen as the platform through which BMW can bring this vision for the next generation to life. We'll talk about some of the technical challenges that we encountered and solutions that we found to those challenges, especially as they relate to sonic branding, identity, and data privacy and security. And finally, we'll wrap with a little demo showing you some of the ways that the assistant actually works. We also hope to leave a few minutes for Q&A at the end, so if you have any questions, certainly stick around either here or outside afterwards, depending on timing. So with that, Patrick, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. Welcome and good morning. My name is Patrick Prang, as Emerson said. I'm the product manager for voice experience at the BMW Group Technology Office in Mountain View, California. And today I have the honor to talk about bringing the BMW Group in-vehicle voice experience from idea to reality. The BMW Group includes 3 brands, BMW, Mini, and Rolls-Royce. And today's session will be all about the Mini Intelligent Personal Assistant, the first ever. So we take you on a little journey, right, from the early beginnings of Mini, the Mini heritage, what role the Alexa Custom Assistant plays, to the Mini Intelligent Personal Assistant, and Emerson said, also with a small demo at the end of our session. So when talking about Mini, right, Mini was always something special from the early beginnings. Late 50s, when Mini was introduced with this spacious 4-seater interior, sporty driving experience, to the next generation of Mini when the BMW Group took over Mini, to the all-new Mini, which is coming to the US early next year, including a fully electric lineup. But also, when talking about Mini, you need to take a look of what the Mini community is doing with their cars, right? At the bottom left, for example, the Turbonator, where somebody obviously tried to get a little bit more extra horsepower out of his Mini, to the Mini with the Union Jack. Anybody remembers why this car was so important for Mini? Anybody has a clue? It holds the world record of fitting 26 gymnasts in this car. So Mini was always quite spacious and always good for a surprise. To the Mini with the wing doors, I guess somebody wanted to have an easier entry, right? So if anybody of you drives like a Mini or ever sit in a Mini on the passenger or driver seat, also in the second row, then you know what I'm talking about. But when talking about Mini, we should also not forget about the Mini community. And each of those images stand for a certain segment the Mini community represents. From the early beginning, the Mini community exchanged technical stats, customization options, and did some joint driving sessions like Mini Takes the State Rally, which is happening in the US every 2 years, for example. And so Mini is something special. The brand is something special, and the community behind it is something special because they have like a personal relationship to their car, which you see on those images. So understanding Mini, the brand, the heritage, to the fan base and the community, to really what makes both together so special, we defined four key characteristics the Mini Intelligent Personal Assistant had to represent. The first characteristic is a strong and versatile tech stack, which represents the Mini's innovation power from the early beginning. What do I mean with that? So when defining the product vision of the Mini Intelligent Personal Assistant, one key requirement was a strong embedded / offline capability, right? Mini customers, they always expect their Mini Intelligent Personal Assistant to work. The car is a moving target. Sometimes there is a lack of online connectivity. So we wanted to make sure that the Mini customers always can use their Intelligent Personal Assistant. The second requirement we defined was we wanted to develop our own custom skills for certain use cases like car control, car knowledge, or even chit-chat to really emphasize the strong branding perspective and really differentiate from other implementations out there. And the third one was Mini customers are used to use a Mini ID for an entry point to the Mini ecosystem. And we didn't want to change that. So Mini ID was also one key requirement in order to use the Mini Intelligent Personal Assistant. And those three are just like a snapshot of all the other requirements we had and we were defining in the early beginnings of this project. The next one is we had to present the emotional aspect Mini represents while driving a car. When taking a look at the new Mini with the first ever round display in the automotive sector, it already creates an emotional experience, right? You have the round display, and in the center you have the light projector highlighting the dashboard. The voice experience had to be on par to this UI component. So we wanted to transport also the emotional aspect. And the next one is, as you saw in the previous slides, the personal aspect, right? Mini customers love to customize their vehicles and make something special out of it. So we wanted to also emphasize the personal relationship they have and really make it special when customers are going into their car and getting a personalized greeting in the morning, right? So for example, hey Mini, good morning. And then it says, Patrick, good morning, how are you? It makes a difference if it's saying your first name rather than just, hey user, how's it going, right? And the next one is the intelligent component. So we wanted to make sure that we proposed the right content at the right time, so making proactive suggestions during a journey the Mini customers are having. Those are the key characteristics we defined for the Mini Digital Companion and how we were able to translate this product vision into a product. Emerson will tell you now all about it. Emerson?
Thanks, Patrick.
You're welcome.
So many vehicles today have some kind of in-car personal assistant. There are a lot of solutions out there on the market. There are several options as well for what you might consider a white-labeled, kind of fully branded or customized version. But there are none that offer the breadth of capabilities, the flexibility, and the depth and power of technology and scale like Alexa and specifically the Alexa Custom Assistant. So what is Alexa or Alexa Custom Assistant? There we go. ACA is part of Alexa's enterprise portfolio and enables businesses all over the world to create a fully customized, highly tailored experience specific to whatever their particular use case or customer needs might be, without needing the heavy lifting of defining the technology infrastructure, of maintaining all of that scalable capabilities across the entire globe, without needing to build up your own natural language processing kind of expertise. It's a one-stop shop for this kind of omni-channel voice experience. The core technology is similar to the Alexa that hundreds of millions of people use all over the world, but it's powered by customized developer tooling and a global, very capable professional services team to make sure, again, that we can empower enterprises of any size or shape, and regardless of what their particular expertise might be with voice technology to make these incredibly compelling experiences for their end users. Alexa, of course, is a general purpose voice assistant, but we recognize that a general purpose voice assistant is not necessarily the right thing for every particular use case. We also recognize that we don't know drivers and we don't know the Mini community the same way that the BMW Group knows drivers and knows the Mini community. And so we designed ACA for this notion of being able to rapidly experiment and prototype to make sure, again, that any of these partners that we have, regardless of what type of end device or what type of end experience they are building, that they are able to make something that accurately reflects the needs and expectations of both their brand as well as their end users. We also want it to just work, right? It's extremely frustrating when you have a voice assistant that doesn't understand what you say, and that challenge of accurately understanding the user in an automobile can be significantly greater, as well as then the potential impact if it doesn't understand what the user said. We did some research many, many years ago identifying the way that people feel about errors in voice technology. And we discovered that if you're using a mobile app, for example, and you hit the button and it doesn't work, you think, okay, the mobile app's broken, or my phone's broken, or I don't have internet connectivity, or something like that. It's not your fault. It's the device's fault, or it's the app maker's fault. What we discovered is that in voice, people actually internalize those problems. They don't think, oh, the device didn't understand me. They think it's my fault that it didn't understand me. Maybe I said something wrong, I phrased my command incorrectly, or I mumbled, or something like that. And found that that actually impacts a user's perception of the quality of whatever end device they're interacting with. And so if it's a $50 smart speaker that they're interacting with, and it impacts their perception of quality, that's one thing. If it's a $40,000 sports car and it impacts their perception of the quality, that's an entirely different challenge. And so ACA, just like Alexa, features incredibly powerful speech recognition capabilities, and also like Alexa, it is constantly learning and constantly getting better as Amazon continues to push the state-of-the-art of natural language processing. It also then sort of helps us tie back, again, this notion of flexibility within the solution, helps us tie back to one of our leadership principles here at Amazon, one of my personal favorite leadership principles, which is this notion of customer obsession. And so rather than trying to say, okay, we're going to start with this kind of off-the-shelf solution, and then you can slice and dice it to fit your needs, we really do try to start with what are the needs, the problems, the challenges of that end customer, and then work backwards from there, hand in hand with partners like BMW, to find some kind of solution. And Patrick mentioned some of those requirements that the BMW Group had. They need the sonic branding. They need the way that the assistant sounds and acts to reflect the specific nuances of their brands, of Mini, of BMW. They need the capability to have a sort of hybrid model where some of it can live in the cloud, but then some core capabilities can live on the device. And they need that to be seamless, sort of imperceptible to the end users. And they needed to reflect that sense of community, that sense of excitement and adventure that the Mini group instills in its drivers. And I think they've done a great job.
I guess so too. So let's start with voice experience, right? Normally you start with invoking the keyword and having like a voice chrome. With the Alexa custom assistant, we were able to introduce the Hey Mini custom keyword plus our little voice chrome with Spike, the English bulldog, which is representing the Mini brand. And the voice chrome and the keyword, they have two main purposes, right? The first is to really tell the customer, hey, I'm ready, and also emphasizes the branding aspect. So custom keyword, Hey Mini, plus the Mini voice chrome with Spike. The next essential part of a voice experience is the voice. If you don't have a natural sounding voice, people just won't use your product. With the Alexa custom assistant, as Amazon already stated out, we were able to introduce and develop an own branded voice for the brand Mini. And we defined certain character traits for the Mini voice. And just to mention a few, one is the Mini Intelligent Personal Assistant is your partner in crime. It is supportive, engaging, and brave. So what do we mean with those character traits? For the partner in crime, saying, for example, hey Mini, do you have friends? There is not only one specific answer like, my best friend is behind the wheel. No, it also can vary the answer in saying, you are my number one. So I do like to mingle in the parking lot. And as you remember, one of the first slides, a Mini driver is always parking next to each other, right? So the cars can mingle to each other. So it's an engaging companion to really have an emotional bond with you. Or supportive. When you say like, hey Mini, good morning, right back at you, Patrick. Or it's always a good morning with you behind the wheel, Patrick. So this is something the voice had to reflect and transport in really answering to the customer, and how we were achieving to really have those character traits into then the final product of the voice. Amazon will tell you now all about the voice creation process, which we did together.
So the first step in creating any kind of synthetic voice is identifying what those character traits are. And I think that's something not just with creating new text-to-speech models, but with a lot of investment or development that people do in voice technology. That is an often overlooked step. And it's absolutely vital to make sure that you, as you're designing this, that you implement it in a way that would be the same as if a representative of your company, a human representative of your company, were actually speaking and interacting with the end user. The capability to make new synthetic voices has been around for some time. Mini vehicles are available globally. They're available in dozens of countries, representing dozens of different languages, and Alexa speaks dozens of languages, so that's a great fit. Alexa has a ton of voices. Perhaps you've played around with some of the different voices there, or the voices that are offered through AWS's Polly service. And those voices are fantastic. And especially the neural TTS voices are very sophisticated. But Alexa's voices, as much as I love them, don't necessarily inspire a sense of adventure in me. They don't necessarily excite me. They don't make me feel energized as if I'm going to be rolling through the gears in my tiny little sports car. Again, great for the general purpose assistant, not as great for this particular use case. So what do? Well, you find a voice actor. You have them record a linguistically distinct corpus of utterances, thousands and thousands of phrases that they might say, some general purpose ones, some specific to the Mini brand, the different vehicles they have, the names for the controls and functionalities within the vehicle. You tag that audio with tons of metadata about what the specific utterance is. You train a neural network with all of that data, and voila, you have a great new text-to-speech model. And typically, these models rely just in the cloud. But as Patrick was saying, that is not good enough for Mini. That's not good enough for this particular use case. There are lots of times where a driver all over the world may not have a sufficient or any internet connectivity at all. And so while we do have some models that live directly in the cloud, powered by AWS inferentia chips, extremely high fidelity and accuracy, we do need a way for something to support that other large segment of user interaction. Imagine today, if you're driving and we're here in the desert now, we get half an hour west of Vegas and we lose all cell reception, and I want to change the radio station, I want to change the temperature. Most people will take their eyes off the steering or off the road, will play around in the dash, and that's distracting at best, potentially dangerous at worst. And so what we've done is that in addition to that cloud-based model, we've created what we're calling a neural text-to-speech light model that actually lives on the device, that is optimized for low CPU and memory footprint, but still provides that same incredibly high fidelity interaction and incredibly high fidelity voice, such that a user is not going to know if they're talking to the one that happens to live in the cloud or they're talking to the one that happens to live on the device. That model does not support every possible interaction. I mean, again, imagine if I'm driving down the road and I ask, I have no cell reception, and I ask, what is the weather going to be in Los Angeles next week? Like, there's no way to sort of fake that kind of weather information. But if I need to do command and control about the car, I have a check engine light that I might need to find out what it means. I need to see when the next place I need to turn on my long road trip might be. All of those kind of core commands that somebody might always need to be able to do, we can build in to be able to support in both that online and offline mode. And so that's great to be able to have one synthetic voice that sounds like one voice actor that speaks one language with one accent. But the BMW Group and Mini is, again, a global brand. And it needs to be able to speak lots of different languages with lots of different accents and be able to understand them as well. So how do we solve that? Well, we could try and find a person who happens to speak all of those languages and have them record a bunch of data sets with all of those languages. But that's unrealistic, right? Even the most studious of linguists or the most talented of voice actors is not going to speak dozens of languages the same way that a native fluent speaker would speak. So okay, so that's not a good idea. We could try and find a bunch of different voice actors. We could try and have one person, record for each of the individual languages and accents that they might need. But that's not a great experience either. Imagine you're in a multilingual household. You and your spouse are driving down the road. You ask a question to the assistant in English. Your spouse asks a question to the assistant in Spanish, and it sounds like it's two radically different people that are responding back to you. That is a less than ideal experience for a Mini driver. So that one's not a great idea. So what do? Well, think about what makes speech speech. Patrick and I could say the exact same words. We could even try and do a little pantomime, try and do an impression of the other person. But they're always, our words are always going to sound different. And that's because it's not just the raw text that you hear. It's not as if we say it and we get a little speech bubble above us. There's a ton of additional metadata in people's speech. You can get things like age, gender, emotion, native or non-native language, and fluency. Even physical characteristics like physique or health conditions you can detect through people's voices. And we do this naturally every day in our interaction with regular humans. But imagine if we had a way to identify what all of those individual characteristics are, to separate them, to sort of disentangle them from the audio itself, and be able to quantify and describe them. We could maybe be able to make my speech sound like I was a native German speaker like Patrick. And so that process is something that we call speech disentanglement. Again, sort of breaking apart the underlying characteristics from the raw audio and the text, the words themselves. Speech disentanglement and the technology that we use to be able to create a multilingual, multi-speaker speech-to-text model is called polyglot. With polyglot, so in addition to the main voice talent that we have, in addition to the primary voice model, what we do is we actually record a ton of additional audio from many, many speakers. Each speaker is only speaking whatever their one fluent and native language would be. We record a ton of additional data there. We tag that data with as much information as we possibly have about the underlying characteristics, again, things like the physical, psychological, social, or demographic characteristics of those individual speakers. We then use that big data set to trade individual models for each of the additional languages, all built on sort of subtly identifying and then manipulating those differences between the characteristics. And then we're actually able to then apply those manipulations to our core voice talent model to make it seem as if that one person who had the perfect voice and the perfect accent that represents the mini group, to make it seem that instead of them just speaking the one native language that they speak, now it seems like suddenly they speak every possible language that, that mini might need. This, again, has benefits where we don't need to try and identify multiple perfect voice actors. We can stick with the one kind of critical person that we have. We can also do this much faster, much cheaper, much more easily, and at much, much greater fidelity than any type of similar type of text-to-speech manipulation that would otherwise be possible. So I wonder what that sounds like.
Of course, awesome. Maybe two add-ons what I want to add. Like, of course, it's mini, right? We had to transport also the mini British accent in the voice, and best case across all of the locales we are supporting. And our voice actor was a big mini fan. So he said it's so awesome because his grandma also drove a mini. So he's like fully excited to support, to really be the mini intelligent personal assistant. And just assume, right, in the morning you go into the car, see this lovely new interior with the round display, and greet your mini, like, hey mini, good morning.
It's always a good morning with you behind the wheel, Patrick and Emerson.
So we, on purpose, defined a male voice for the mini intelligent personal assistant because it really reflects all the character traits we defined. Hey Mini, how are you?
Lovely. These days were made to drive. Shall we wind down the windows and get rolling?
We will definitely do that later, after the session. But why don't you introduce yourself a little bit to the audience?
I'm your virtual assistant, not a human being. But you can still talk to me.
Okay. Where are you from?
I am from Oxford in the UK, but my new home is Munich, where the BMW comes from. But I'll feel at home wherever you take me.
That makes two of us. So how good is your German then?
Bestimmt genauso gut wie deines.
So the same voice actor is now, or the voice is, or the intelligence behind it is now able to speak German. Okay, are you also able to speak any other languages?
安全運転を心がけましょう。
So he's also able to speak Japanese. And what else? Or what other languages?
आपसे निवेदन है कि आप अपनी कुर्सियों की पेटी बांध ले।
So that was Hindi as well. And from my perspective, you really can hear the same voice font with the slight British accent across all of the locales. Cool, so you're truly international. Thanks for introducing yourself to the audience.
My pleasure, and I'll wait in the car for you.
So this is the first glimpse of our mini intelligent personal assistant coming into the cars soon. And stay tuned for more exciting news around the mini intelligent personal assistant. If you have a chance, take a look at the Sphere. We found out that there is basically a mini commercial running and Spike is jumping all over it. So that is pretty cool.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. If you do have any questions that come up in the future, certainly reach out to Patrick or myself on LinkedIn or other social media platforms. And like Patrick said, stay tuned to see what is up next for Mini and the BMW Group as we go into this next year.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of the show.